Hello again, everybody. Potentially the last time I'm able to say that to everybody here. So good morning, evening, afternoon, whenever it is that you're deciding to give this a little watch. Today I'm going to be presenting my project titled Looking Back, Anti-Racist and Restorative Practices for Equitable Classrooms. For this assignment in specific, I chose the creative work option in the form of a reflective letter to my future self, which I will have included for everybody in the discussion board. As you can also see it to the right here, at least the beginning of it. I've included this letter for you to follow along as I present some of the most important aspects or key aspects and insights behind it. So feel free to pause me at any time to cross-reference anything that I may mention here. I want this to really feel like a collaborative exploration of all of these ideas, even though I cannot hear or see any of you physically. Another thing to note as well, the very beginning of this letter starts out very conversational, very informative, something that's very useful to sort of bridge you into what I'm really trying to get. So if you get through this first little section here, you're gonna see that that's pretty informal. And then from there, I'm gonna get into the workshop, the really bread and butter of what I had planned for this presentation. Anyways, the letter imagines the successful implementation of a workshop focused on anti-racist and restorative practices in education. It's deeply personal to me, especially connecting my experiences with the systemic inequities we've studied in this course. This project became a way to turn theory into action and envision what meaningful equity in education could actually look like. So let's actually make this look a little prettier for you, because you all have that in front of you right now. As you can see, this is the title of my presentation, but we'll go right into slide 2, which is the overview of the project. This project began with a question. What does equity in education actually look like in practice? It's one thing to talk about abstract concepts like this, like bias or inclusion, but it's really another to imagine how those ideas can shape real classrooms and real lives. The letter centers on a workshop that I imagined, which is really a space where imaginary educators address implicit bias, learn restorative practices, and create inclusive learning environments. It doesn't go too in-depth, it's just more of like a workshop where you can have some ideas. So those examples that I produced in that letter aren't very in-depth, they're just very broad stroke. Module 6 and 8 were actually super instrumental in shaping this sort of vision that I had for this. Module 6 helped me confront the structural nature of racism, while Module 8 actually inspired me to think about representation and how inclusion can transform not just policies, but daily interactions. Personal and professional experiences also played a significant role in this. I grew up in a couple different systems that weren't built to support or uplift me, which shaped my worldview as well as my resilience to a lot of different things, which you'll kind of see more in that first half, as I mentioned previously. Later, however, as a professional, I saw some students navigating some similar barriers. Although every individual experience is unique, I thought it'd be important to mention that as well. So the letter became a way to channel that frustration into hope, and hope that equity can be built one intentional step at a time, more or less. So something that sort of inspired me a long time ago, if I were to even put it into a question format, would be, have you ever wondered how much difference one small action can actually make? This letter is exploring that idea. It imagines how daily practices can really branch outward to create significant systemic change. Moving on, some reflections on the process. This project absolutely was not without its challenges, but it was super rewarding. One of the biggest challenges was imagining outcomes that felt both meaningful and realistic. I wanted to avoid vague promises and instead focus on measurable changes. So things that were statistically significant, like reducing disciplinary disparities and improving retention rates for students and faculty in this case. Balancing idealism with practicality pushed me to think critically about what success looks like in this context. A triumph for me was how personal this letter became. Writing to my future self gave me the space to reflect on systems I've experienced and the changes I want to see. It also reinforced the importance of small, intentional actions. Reading students by name, rethinking disciplinary measures, or integrating diverse voices into certain lesson plans. The sort. Something in this letter, if you're reading at some point, or if you'll find it at some point, is behind every numerical input is a face. A life shaped by decisions and policies that fail to account for their worth. This line reminded me that equity isn't just about numbers or policies. It's about the lives impacted by the systems we create, the lives behind those numbers. They're not just numbers, they're people. So think about the students you may have encountered, or even your own experience in school in general. How many moments could have been different if someone had taken the time to truly see you or value your voice? This came up in a couple of our discussions, actually. Can't remember which one in specific. I tried desperately trying to find it, but I do remember some of my peers mentioning some challenges that they've had to overcome and are still working on overcoming. So just some food for thought here if you ever want to do some digging. Let's move on. Our contribution to course community. This project contributes to our course community by turning abstract concepts into tangible real-life examples. We spent a ton of time in this class discussing systemic inequities and the power of education to challenge them. The letter takes those ideas and imagines how they can come to life in a school setting or educational setting. The workshop wasn't just about teaching restorative practices, though. It was about creating an environment where every child feels seen, supported, and celebrated in some respect. By tying outcomes like reduced suspensions or increased retention to daily practices, the project bridges the gap between theory and reality. Most importantly, I believe, it reminds us that equity isn't an abstract concept. It's really a daily commitment, and it's a choice that we make with every interaction, every policy, and every lesson plan. It's something that we really all have the power to influence, believe it or not. So what would equity look like in your own space? How might a small change end up turning into something way bigger? Call to action. I think I'd like to close with this. Equity starts with imagination. If we can envision a better future, we can begin to create it. In the letter, I described a workshop where teachers embraced restorative practices, addressed their biases, built classrooms that celebrated diversity. These aren't just aspirational ideas, they're actionable. I feel like that's what's important about this. Each of us has the power to make a small, intentional changes that contribute to equity. Greet students by their names. Reconsider how you approach conflict. Integrate diverse perspectives into your lesson plans. These actions may feel small, but they're really the foundation for larger systemic change. The workshop I imagined is absolutely fictional, probably not too in-depth either, but the principles behind it are real, as I'm sure you'll see as you read along. Let's commit to taking these first steps together. Thank you again for listening in. Can't wait to hear your thoughts and potentially answer any questions about the letter, hopefully. And we'll chat soon, guys.